Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to our Dissipation of Glamour webinar. Okay, I'm in the far north, and you can tell that because what I have on here is full of reindeer. You probably don't see that, but this is north of the Arctic Circle quite a bit, and what Tuya and I are calling the Little Bear Meditation Center. And Santa Claus is one of our closest neighbors. Well, actually, Santa Claus does come from Finland after all. And he lives on Ear Mountain, I guess. There's a way to say that in Finnish. I'm not sure. Korva something. And it's really different up here. And everything, it's Arctic. But that kind of reminds you of the austerity of the spirit, which I think is a good reminder for all of us. Well, there's so much going on now in the world, and the battle is on. As DK said, the forces of materialism would, he said, fight to the last ditch to preserve their privileges, their prerogatives, and I think we're seeing the beginning of that fight. Actually, from a certain perspective, and I think it is somewhat DK's perspective, and when I talk to some of the leaders of the Agni Yoga movement, they seem to agree that the Armageddon, such as we have had it, was the Second World War and really the whole Great War. Now, others look forward to more dire possibilities that could materialize in the future. But we have, as students of esotericism, we have to do everything we can to work subjectively so that cannot possibly materialize. You know, the war itself, the Great War that we've had, 1914 to 1945, should have been kept on the psychological level. It should have been a war fought out on the subtle planes. And to an extent, the war we're in right now is being fought out on the psychological planes. There's just some outrageous things happening, and the good, the beautiful, and the true are being challenged in a blatant kind of way. And we'll see, the last 5.5 years or so of the era of the forerunner before, let's call it Waisak of 2025, those years are now with us. And we will expect, if we're really focused and intent on helping the plan materialize, we will find the opposition, and aspirants and disciples have to watch themselves carefully so they do not let in the opportunity for these negative forces to compromise their attempts to help the plan manifest. So it's going to be a time of testing, I think, definitely. And I'm going to put Tuya over here on the other side. It's going to be a time of testing, for sure. And we just have to be somehow equal to that test. Now I'm going to make myself the presenter so I can continue a little bit with with a little alignment. And then we've reached the point studying some of the individual glamours, but they also have a great application to the different nations that are afflicted by them, and to large gatherings of people. We have reached the seventh ray, the new ray, so to speak, although it's repeated itself with co-joining Aquarius, I think, 6 times already, and this is the 7th occasion, and I think in the Aquarian age, that's when that measurement is taking place. One day we will know the true cycles. DK has given us enough to see some of the important cycles, certainly not all, but at least to govern our lives in a spiritually intelligent manner. That's what we hope, and that our groups will also go with the flow of available energy instead of doing the right thing at the wrong time, which is, again, possible and could, if we're not careful, negate some of our best efforts. But the skillful sailor, as Tuya is always reminding me, knows how to use any type of wind to make the sailboat go forward. And maybe we can also, as students of esotericism, use any kind of circumstance to advance the work. DK says it certainly can be done. It doesn't make any difference where we are, under what circumstances, we can advance the work. So just a little sense of having come together in the site of Master DK and his ashram, and in a larger way the great ashram as a whole. We know a few things that we can apply to help the plan manifest more securely and on time. We certainly don't want that 300-year delay that he says could occur at the outset of the Aquarian age if we don't handle things correctly. But of course the inevitability is with us. There will be a new age, and there will be some kind of elevation of humanity, unless our selfishness, our glamours, particularly because humanity is glamour prone, unless our glamours get the better of us entirely. And interiorly, we must make sure that does not happen. Sometimes you can say to yourself, well, I cannot meet the principal purveyors of glamour. I cannot meet the demagogues and the people that speak to the solar plexus in an age when humanity should be having an increasingly clear mind. I cannot meet them. Therefore, I can't do anything? No. We can do. We have the mantrams. We have our group relations. We have the esoteric understanding of meditation. And we have to act without worrying about the results. We don't worry about the results. We do what is right, and we let these results take care of themselves under the guidance of our superiors. So we'll get to work, and we'll read some things about the seventh ray. I might just quickly review the glamours of the sixth ray, since they are so potent, and since I think quite a number of us have been on that sixth ray, as it leads either to the second ray and sometimes to the third ray. Interesting. It'll all become clear, and then we'll be in a much better position to help our fellow human beings who really vehemently misunderstand. We've all had the experience. So, I just want to welcome you, X number of us here, 33 it looks like for the moment. But hi and welcome Anna and Ario and Bianca, Carl, Catherine, Chris, Deborah, Diana, Frida, Jan, Yoke, Karen, and Marion, it looks like. Catherine Swenson, Catherine O'Brien, and Kim, Laura, Lenny, Leslie, Margot, Mariana, Mariut, Martha, Michael, Nienke, Stacia, Ivan, Zenaidi, and Veronica. Welcome to all of you, and thank you for showing up to do this work. And then over here on the safeguarding side, BL and Joe and Tuya and myself. I guess I'm oftentimes the one that has to be oriented, like when the mute is on and I'm carrying on a silent movie and so forth. But probably out of the programs we're preparing for you, and which go on Makara, mostly, and some, and increasingly more, on YouTube, probably we do get 97% of them correct and in pretty good shape. We try to fix the others, and if it's not possible, well, we have still plenty to study, meditate on, and think about. So do let your friends know, you know, the growth of the ageless wisdom is one of the most important things that can happen today. It can reorient humanity's vision and hopes and aspirations, and we certainly need that. So do your best to spread the word. It is good esoteric news, you know. In the Christian faith, you're supposed to go out and spread the good news, but we have some good news too. All people have to do is apply themselves and want the truth. They have to want the truth, or they will not go with the esoteric worldview. We are in pursuit of truth, and along with it, the good and the beautiful. So let's turn to ray number 7. And, you know, we're not really even trying to make rapid progress here on the pages, because the the qualities are all listed together. And, you know, what we have been through just recently, and it's a very contrasting ray. And if you look carefully in the destiny of the nations, and increasingly I'm trying to read that when it becomes my turn to fill in according to need on the Soul of Nations webinars. We see there's a nice section there which contrasts very much the sixth ray and the seventh ray, and also tells how they might be able to work together. Last week we dealt with the glamour of devotion, of adherence to forms and persons, the glamour of idealism, and remember this is also called the ray of abstract idealism. We're dealing with number 6. The glamour of loyalties and of creeds. I believe this. Credo, you know, this Italian or Latin word which means I believe. The glamour of emotional response rather than illumined mind. The glamour of sentimentality, liking and disliking, that is. The glamour of interference, you know, thinking you're so right you can reach out and correct others. The glamour of the lower of the pairs of opposites, and, you know, you're a saint or you're a sinner, and usually caught oscillating between the two. The glamour of world saviors and teachers, you know, and I believe that my teacher is the teacher, and your teachers are of lesser caliber. You know, some will believe in Muhammad, some will believe in Jesus. There are others, the Buddha. I met, I was in China, and it was the trip in which we were going to the Waisak Valley in the year 2000. Want to show up for the Shambhala Impact, you know. And I talked to an old Buddhist monk. And, well, you know, my Chinese was not very good. And his English was not very good, but all he could do is sort of rail against Jesus and how bad Jesus was, you know. So this idea of having a dismissive attitude towards other helpers and saviors does not belong only to the Western world. It's a phase, you know. It's a question of the security of your consciousness. And when you have a secure and open consciousness, you're willing to admit that there are many carriers of the truth. The law of repulse will, on the sixth ray, will demonstrate this. And of course, naturally, it's wonderful, the law of repulse. I've made commentaries on them according to each of the rays, and I think it's in volume 2, and it's wide light of day. Let's see what happens there. So you get the idea. I'm going to read these, you know, study esoteric psychology. Maybe we'll find a way to. That's how the University of the Seven Rays started, studies of the rays in esoteric psychology, and it is the great needed thing. Anyway, you can imagine the sixth ray type has tunnel vision. But then finally he does the right thing, and the old commentary tells you what that is, but look at what happens to his vision. His tunnel disappeared. He noticed not its loss. Upon the playground of the world he stood with many fellow players. Many, not just his own band, you know. Wide to the light of day. Wide to the light of day. In the far distance stood a mountain blue, one of the colors of the sixth ray, the blue, and from its summit issued forth a voice which said, "Come forward to the mountain top, and on its summit learn the invocation of a Savior. To this great task the follower," that's what he was before, "now a leader, bent his energies. He still pursues the way. So he learns self-reliance. Read these things. They're just wonderful. I memorize them, and some of you have too. But if you don't really stay with it every single day, just about, it's going to sort of fade from memory. At the same time, it can be revived fairly easily. The old commentary is such a way to learn the depth of the teaching. It does require the intuition, which we all have. It's just a question of how to activate it, and how not to get in its way with excessive concrete thought. There has to be concrete thought, but it can be excessive, and that would be a problem. So look, I want to welcome some, a few of you that have just come in. I don't see everybody, but Bianca, hi, nice to have you here. And Dana, hi, and I think I said to Jan already, and if I'm missing you, well, my apologies, but Michael, yes, hi, Starcrow, Michael Starcrow, nice to see you. Okay, so we'll let it go at that, and now turn to this page. Our narrow vision turns wide, and our fanaticism becomes inclusive. All right. Then we go on to the seventh ray, and there does come, every sixth ray type has to have some periods in their many lives when they are also on the seventh ray. It somehow helps to take their non-grounded attitude and actually bring it down to earth. The Catholic Church does have the sixth ray astral body and the seventh ray physical, along with, I should say, the first ray soul, third ray personality, sixth ray mind, fascinating, and sixth ray astral, seventh ray physical. So here is the, what is a glamour really? Any emotional tendency that prevents you somehow or delays you from seeing the truth, from understanding the truth, from having contact with the truth, with reality. There's all kinds of things we just love to do because, quote unquote, that's the way I am. But when you find people too vigorously defending the that's the way I am attitude, watch out for the possibility of glamour, because it generally means that's the way I am and I don't want to change. And I don't want to apply myself to seeing more of reality. We have a big psychological job to do as students of esotericism. And Roberto Assagioli, the psychologist who was, his letters in the Dyna books were F, C, D. And he knew what it was all about. He was an initiate, I do believe. And he just said on his dying, deathbed, make sure they do their personal work. And every one of us, too, we have to make sure that we do our personal work, because that little thing, says Master M, the tiniest grain of sand, can stop the progress of the largest wheel. So we have to crunch that out of the way and not let any little fault stop our progress because we're just ignoring it and saying, oh, well, it's little, So here in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 2, is a discussion of the Blessed Ones and the sort of whole progress. And by the way, a lot of these old commentary things I have taken on in Makara to try to interpret them. There's a lot there, friends, and I want to say, a lot of text. I'm not vouching for my interpretation. I'll just do the best I can. But now, we're trying to undertake cosmic fire too. And there's a special place on Makara for some videos of cosmic fire. We have our meetings in which we discuss cosmic fire, pretty much sequentially. And then, because it's not always possible to have meetings, I do some solo webinars with videos that you can benefit from, and the next time we get together, you'll be able to ask questions from them and bring things up and so forth. There's no way that we're going to comprehend that, the wholeness of that great book for the initiate consciousness, but we can certainly get a lot nearer to the synthesis which is possible when you study what is called the psychological key to the secret doctrine. Well, anyway, in esoteric psychology, you can get some ideas of glamours through the mistakes the seventh ray type makes. Now remember, Uranus is the conveyor of the seventh ray. Uranus has the seventh ray soul, I do believe. But Jupiter, from the ceremonial aspect, also has quite a strong seventh ray. And the moon, too, in its own way, veils Uranus and has this regularity of cycles that correlate with the seventh ray and the regularized third ray. So we start with some bad stuff, black magic, or the use of magical powers for selfish ends, for material ends, It's like if I have power and I know how to do certain things, I'm going to use it to advance my personality and satisfy my personality. I don't care whether you're in the way or not, because I'm going to knock you out of the way with the knowledge that I have, and then I will be able to be satisfied, because I know the techniques of satisfaction. Now, this next one always kind of intrigued me. The power to sit upon the fence till the selfish values emerge. Basically, you may know what is right, but you don't take action, and nor can you necessarily be accused, because there you are, in a deliberative state, sitting on the fence, and who can fault you for that? But really your motive is to do nothing until the selfishness, which at that time you really prefer, emerges. Now, if you look at some of our great deliberative bodies in government, you'll see people acting like this. The first ray and the seventh ray and the sixth ray are said to be the great political rays at this time. 1, 7, and 6, I think, in the destiny of the nations. This may be discussed, but the seventh ray types, for reason of many particulars, can delay everything because they won't take a stand, yet they know which way it's going. So, just test yourself out on every one of these. Now, what HPB said was, until you take the fourth initiation, that's the high initiation, isn't it? You are an unconscious black magician, meaning you still have a personality, you're still tending to that personality, you still want the satisfaction of that personality, even if it's a relatively high satisfaction compared to the earlier days. So everyone who has not taken the fourth initiation is an unconscious black magician. Well, she had a way of saying things in a very arresting manner. But, let us test ourselves against these statements. Disorder and chaos through misunderstanding of the plan. Well, you can be creating your own special order. Everything looks nicely organized to you. The trouble is, it's dead set against what's supposed to happen. And as a result, when the two collide, disorder and chaos result. And let's just remember, Saturn seems to have a fair amount of the seventh ray, and the first even more so, but it does rule the seventh plane, and it rules the entire cosmic physical plane, which is the seventh supercosmic plane. So, it has something to do with the number 7. And it's pretty strict, Saturn, but Uranus is not. Uranus is, maybe you've seen some 7th ray people on their way to order. And things can look really pretty chaotic as everything is revolutionized under Uranus, the major 7th ray planet. Everything is revolutionized for better or for worse. So simply because everything may not be absolutely pristinely neat in the workroom of someone does not mean they don't have the 7th ray. They may be on their way to a new order. Now that can be very good, but on the other hand, it can cause chaos in the manifestation of the plan. See, how a planet will be used, we're not told. It depends upon the quality of the mechanism which the planetary energy impacts. It depends upon the stage of evolution. So much that's going on in our political sphere right now has to do with the fact that younger souls are coming in. You know, they started a bit later in the day, and they haven't achieved as much in terms of their growth, and you see it in how they vote and what they prefer, and the narrow point of view that they have. Well, we have to be skillful in teaching them how to widen their point of view. The wrong use of speech to bring about chosen objectives. I think if you look at certain advertising methods, you don't see cigarettes advertised so much anymore. There's been a pulling back there, and it's advertised in different ways, but you can use advertising mantrams, and it is a 7th ray method. And what you say, blah, 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 you're worth it, you know. Use this because you're worth it. It throws the focus right back on the little you instead of on the wider picture. So we can say many things which are essentially good sounding to someone, but they are lies, basically, well-formulated, manipulative lies that will help the speaker to achieve the chosen objective. And it's not only in what you say, it's the images you use as well. Advertising has become quite sophisticated in that regard. Now, untruth, what is untruth? Is it the same as lies, or is it slightly different from the truth so that it fools the people who hear it and are taken in by it? And certain values are repeated in a very sophisticated way over and over in a rather mantric manner, and they are not really true. DK says, you will be amazed to find out, and hopefully the United States will find out, he says, how little of the material factor or element is really needed to live the happy and fulfilled life. But these little untruths, you know, can lead people astray. I think Bucyrus, in the third labor of Hercules, he was used to dishing out nice-sounding untruths, which kept his students bound to him, bound to the altar, as it were, for many, many years. And, you know, there is this slavery to the teacher. Sometimes the teacher really wants that adulation, and sometimes the teacher doesn't want it at all and has to divest himself, because, as Master DK says, if there's too much of the 6th ray quality, it's going to bind the hands and feet of the teacher through devotion. And of course, it can be induced through the use of untruth, through mantrams that sound good, formulations of words that sound good, but basically they're a little bit off. And as a result, those people who adhere to them are going to be off the track in their spiritual pursuits. It can even be such a thing as my teacher is the best teacher of esotericism on the earth at this time. Well, your teacher may be very, very good, but to assert that your teacher is the best is kind of an untruth, close to the truth, but it's untruth, because you just don't know. You have nothing to compare it to, not wide enough, nor have you experienced the teaching of other teachers. The whole factor of the 7 rays enters, and many complications. So, basically, truthfulness. It's hard because it brings sort of immediate karma. But Madame Blavatsky said of Master DK when she was in Tibet, and he was advising her on many things because he had already passed the degree that she was working on. He was probably 4th degree initiate, and she not quite. So she said, I know a youth so pure that no lie would ever cross his lips. And she was speaking of Master DK. And finally, the sex magic element, the selfish perversion of soul power. So it's using the energy of sex to sell, to get what you want in the lower field. It's the classic thing where you got this new car and you have some, beautiful woman, or maybe it's a man sometimes, I don't know, draped all over the car. You're using the attraction to the opposite sex, whatever it is, or to the same sex, opposite sex, whatever you find attractive, and you're using that attraction for an end which is a lower end, like selling, like advancing. Every time a person addresses to have a maximum amount of sex appeal, they are, in a way, advancing their career through the perversion of the law of attraction. And it doesn't have to go the other way either, where there's just such an extreme denial of the natural magnetism which exists. But our society is full of this, the sex magic. I mean, you know how it is when you're in an airport. You're walking along. You usually have to walk a long way to get from gate to gate. They inevitably channel you through some kind of luxury perfume and accessory place where so much is available to enhance the beauty of the body and all that. And these are more than life-size models, whether men or women, and the place just reeks of using the sexual magnetism to sell the product. You've experienced it. And say, is there any way around this? Can one walk around this place? Or do you have to, go down that path? But it's good to see it, because you realize how people think and you realize what sells. Okay, so now I'd like to open the floor, whether anybody has any experience with this. Is it part of has it ever been part of your nature? And, there's many ways not to tell the truth, of course. I think all of us have that experience. I'm not sure about the particularly mantric approach to not telling the truth. I have had very little 7th ray in my present makeup, though maybe quite a bit in the past, and maybe I can think of things from the past. But generally, unless you have some pretty strong 7th ray somewhere, where could it be? It could be in the body. It could be in the mind, even around the time of the first initiation. It could be naturally the personality, and it can be the soul. So any of those places the seventh ray can come in, and the energy is not going to be perfectly used immediately. So is there anyone that can relate to any of this in your life? Or have you ditched it entirely and now everything is quite managed, you know? Powers of the soul, you know, for selfish ends. I think a lot of people fall into that one. And speech is a problem. Sex magic is a big problem. You know, advancing your personal agenda through this power of the law of attraction, which is essentially a soul power. Anybody feel connected to this, to these particular ones? Anything? It's kind of hard to admit, I know. I would admit it if I felt the connection, but I've just, when I take my own PIP test, the seventh ray is always the bar on the bar graph, which is the least, has the least elevation. But I am learning to appreciate the seventh ray by being associated with people on the seventh ray, and it comes back to me in various things from other lives. And you get swept by rays that you once had, even though they're not going anywhere right now developmentally. So anybody want to say anything about these 6 negative approaches that occur probably more in the beginning of development, and then they're kind of left over, you know, to deal with until they have finally been thrown away? Okay, so Ario is here, and there you go, Ario.
Yeah, when I look at these 7-ray things here, then I would say that they are also very much reasons for the climate change now.
Mm-hmm. How do you say a little more about that?
Yeah, because all those things which are just trying to sell more and produce more and more and more, they are using energies for such unnecessary things.
Yeah. No,
and also those who produce those products, they also very much then pollution air and ground and waters.
Exactly, because the seventh ray is the ecological ray, and it has it's supposed to be caring for the environment, but in the early days, maybe just the opposite is the case. Later, you know, the whole ecological movement is, I think, going to succeed because of the seventh ray. But, you know, as you say, earlier on, before that is understood, there is this production, this manifestation, the whole thing about, is it necessary, is it unnecessary? And we do produce a lot of unnecessary things. And he tells us that the fifth ray gets into the act on that too, with the overproduction of things, you know. And that may become as a surprise, but the fifth ray has the technique to make it happen. So, you know, the seventh ray is so connected with the divine plan and the manifestation of the plan. But at first we just don't understand that, you know. And we think of ourselves and we use whatever method we have to advance our own selfish ends. And some of those are magical methods. So it is, every one of these rays has its downside. And usually the downside appears first before things are corrected. So, you know, now we're going into the seventh ray age. Let's see how it works. Now, and you know, and sometimes people get caught in their routines and their physical disciplines and the things that do what DK calls it is doing the right thing physically. Now, we do have to do the right thing physically, but it's just It's the foundation of still other things that are involving connecting heaven and earth. And people sometimes get stuck in their routines and they lose the plot when it comes to the higher purpose of the routine or the pattern, etc. Yeah, okay, so we'll watch that. We'll watch what we produce, huh, Ariel? Thank you. Thank you.
Michael?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Chris has a comment and somebody has their hand up. Natney has her hand up.
Okay, so let's first get the verbal part of it, and then we'll look over here. Natney is there. You are. You can speak. Yes, Natney.
I sort of Ray 4 in me,
Yes.
and the wrong use of speech to bring about chosen objectives. My chosen objectives is immediately to want to make something better. And I use the wrong speech because that's the objective rather than the right way of getting getting it better.
Well,
getting what the situation needs to be bettered.
I think we studied a little bit with Ray 4 that there can be an oversensitivity to that which is produced by speech. At the same time, there's this ability to understand what will be harmoniously received, where the consciousness of one's listener really is, and how to say something good in the right way so it is received. I got a little bit of that from what you said.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's not really a manipulation. See, the thing with Ray 7 and Ray 3 is they can work on the external part and sort of manipulate their listener into doing certain things. I was thinking about that today, with the advertising mantrams. Manipulate their listener into doing certain things, and the listener doesn't even know they've been manipulated because there's such a clever way of addressing the listener. I know now, this is a very interesting thing. I read a biography of Francis Bacon, and he carried a notebook. And in that notebook, there were lists of many, many verbal responses, each to be used in the appropriate situation. In other words, he would know, because he wrote it down, what to say under a certain circumstance. It was totally planned. It was not spontaneous at all. So he had his own method of fitting in, and as DK said, the seventh-rate people are often quite a social success because of how they speak and what they say to others. With the fourth ray, it's a little more internal and it's more spontaneous, and the objective will be achieved, but not because you've manipulated the person. So there's different approaches. Well, fourth ray, okay. Yeah. Anything?
That's, yeah. Makes me feel better.
No, you're, look, we all have to get things done. And and we have to work with people. So it's just a question of how we do that. If we're thinking, okay, well, I'm the boss and I don't care what people's desire is, they're going to do what I want to do. And I don't care if they know that I'm manipulating them or not. I just want to get done what I want to get done. That is a kind of a negative approach. And if it's not just kind of a negative approach, it's a negative approach. And if we're honest about explaining why an objective is desirable, and we do that skillfully, we can accomplish the same thing in a much more positive manner. Anyway, fourth ray is a big thing, and coming in strongly in just a few years. Thank you, Natni. Okay, now it was a question mark here, a couple of them, and a couple of question marks. And let me just see. Did you say, oh yeah, here's Chris. Okay. Yeah. You know, I didn't know much about Stephen Colbert. And I even forget the name of his show, Late Night something, I don't know. This man is a real comic genius. And he's a Taurus, by the way, but I think, I'm not sure, he's got some Gemini in there. He certainly does shine the light on things, and he's quite a mimic, you know. So when you get Mercury and Gemini going, you know, the mimicry is possible. But I'm sure of the Taurus part. The comedian's phrase of truthiness, yeah, right, to describe untruth, also, and the current use of alternative facts. Alternative facts. I think Kellyanne Conway brought that one out, like you can pick and choose between the facts. I mean, I think you can pick and choose between your interpretation of facts, but facts are facts, and the degree to which we seem willing to bend or distort the truth these days is incredible, and it indicates a great selfishness. I like this word truthiness. It kind of feels like truth, you know, but not quite. It's in that direction, but just enough not there to not be truth. Okay, so that's what's going on quite a bit in our public discourse, in our public political discourse, and there are certain commentators who are trying to keep people honest, you know, and they run sometimes into a hard time. And it's amazing how the end justifies the means in the case of so many people. I mean, I'll do and say anything as long as I get my way. And just watch this impeachment thing that's going on. It's going to be a real lesson in exactly that type of approach. Sometimes I almost gasp at the retrogression which seems to have fallen upon the American psyche, and then, of course, it's implicating other people. But as I said, a lot of people have come into the United States who are relatively younger in their soul nature, and they have not worked their way out of their strictly personal desires, and which they will defend to the last ditch, you know. So, okay, thank you, Chris. Yeah, I like this truthiness. Yeah, that's. I'll have to remember that. Okay, and now Jan has and Diana. So I'll just go down the list here, and Michael. Okay, I'll just go down the list. So there's a question here, Jan. Are all glamorous personality based? The idea is yes, but if sufficient soul energy comes in, it can so stimulate a vehicle that its reaction is a distorted or glamorous one. So DK says now, be careful, because sometimes soul energy itself can increase the glamour, and in order to dispel illusion, you need intuition, but not so much when dealing with glamour. In order to dissipate glamour, you need the beam of clear, truthful, analytical light, which is much more like the Ajna Center and the fifth ray. So, you know, what are our reactions to soul energy? That's the question. And we can get swept off our feet and have a glamorous response. Are the glamorous, you say, or ask, that individuals may be prone to? in the seed of personality, yes, and also in the vehicles, the ray tendencies and cultivation of the personality vehicles, not just the personality ray per se. The glamours of the mind are there, and especially when mixed with kama manas, So every time you think, there's emotion connected to it. It's what Jung calls the feeling toned thought. So that's a mixture of the two, and you can't quite separate them. So there are problems arising in each of the vehicles, and they do particularly affect our emotional attitude towards certain conditions and towards interpretations. Now, how did Germany, that great fourth ray soul country that produced Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, and other great composers, especially in the realm of music, I'm talking, how could it descend to such a glamorous condition? Well, probably under von Bismarck as an avatar of the other side, says the Tibetan. But the soul energy there coming in was simply misused, and a great battle between the Teutons and all the other forces was conceived. You can misuse soul energy, and it can show up in the personality as a glamour or an illusion. So it's not just enough to receive a stream of soul energy, we have to use it correctly. So are they in the personality? Yes, basically, that's where the glamour seems to originate, and in the personality's reaction, vehicle by vehicle, to soul energy descending. Now, if so, you say, the glamours may hold the power of expression from personality as well as rays. Well, personality rays, and the cultivation of the vehicles over many lives. I mean, you pretty well get the mental, astral, and etheric vehicle that you deserve. You've cultivated that under the influence of certain rays. And so the present ray is important, but also what you've done with it in the past can produce glamours. Just the tendency of the vehicle, according to what you've done with it developmentally up to this point. So yes, from the personality vehicles and the personality and the rays in astrology associated with those vehicles. So, would that be correct? And I think we can say that certainly an aspect of it is correct. We'd have to go point by point on it, but when you look at the combination of how far has the personality and its vehicles developed, what have been the skandhas, the tendencies from the past, considering all the different rays in astrology we've worked on, in what condition is your personality and its vehicles when you are incarnated, because the permanent atoms or the atomic triangle will pretty well determine that. And then what do you do with the present rays, which condition and offer opportunity? And what do you do with the present astrological factors, which condition and offer opportunity? So I would say, I don't think we should split things up too much. It's the whole collection of energies which will lead to the glamour. And we should not separate personality from the past conditioning and its astrology and rheology, and the present impress in the present incarnation on the personality, and that impress has to do with rays and astrology as well. So, it's complicated, and all those energies get together, and we have to react to them or respond to them in the right way. What is the right way? Well, we just have to have enough real soul insight to know how to do good in the present circumstances and act in line with the divine plan as we understand it, and to uphold, most difficult, the quality of harmlessness about which he writes and talks about a severe discipline. I guess that's what I can say there for the moment. But not just one thing or the other. Now, let's see, now here's Diana. The mineral kingdom is under the influence of the seventh ray, yes, and pretty much the first ray as well, because it's the first plane. And the attribute of geometrical order, yes, and although the great geometrician is the seventh ray, we do have practical geometry associated with the seventh ray, and not only the second, and the third ray and the higher mind have some geometrical tendencies. So the seventh ray, particularly with its attribute of geometrical order. Okay, how could we relate this attribute under the ray 7 pick influence? I do not know when, maybe during 7R, 7SR, and then you have years 2035 to 2075. I'm not sure what you're trying to say that there. Let me go on a little bit. It could be possible that this kingdom could be crystalline, and we, as human, have our mineral elements in our body well organized. Yes, indeed. We have to, he says something about the seventh ray for the coming age, and how healthier, more resilient bodies are going to be built under the influence of the seventh ray. And there are probably particular moments when the seventh ray particularly is strong. Now, if we look at, let's say we have a subcycle of 1575 to 2075, and we divide that by 7, you know, let's see what I've got here. And, and is it going to help me? Yes, okay. So that's 500 years, and let's see, divided by 7, or maybe by 14 coming in and out. But there's going to be approximately 70 years, interestingly. Let's see, is that correct? Have I done that correctly? I'm going to try again. 500 divided by 7 equals, 70 years. So the last 70 years, actually, we are somewhat right now in a seventh ray sub-cycle of the 500-year ray 2 cycle that we've been experiencing since 1575. All of these sub-cycles have to be worked out, and there is a superimposition of all these cycles on top of each other, which the masters know and we don't. And analyzing this superimposition, they can tell pretty much what can be done and will be done. I'm still not really understanding, Diana, 7R, 7SR, and 2035.
She says later on, 7 ray, 7 sub ray.
Okay, well that's what we're in. Okay, very good. So we have arrived at the same conclusion later on. Right, okay, I got it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, well, we are setting things in form at this time. Now, here's another thing. You could divide things in this way. You could say, okay, there's a 350-year descending cycle of the seventh ray, and that would take us to, the year 1925. Really important. So I think so. So add 300, no. Well, there's different ways of doing it. I gave you a second ray cycle, and we could have a 700 year. Let me try this way. Coincidence, 700 year divided by 7 is 100 years per cycle until, but the trouble is we kind of have 1675. Okay, 1675 is the year that DK gives us for the particular seventh ray cycle he's talking about, plus 700 years, and that equals the year 2375. Now, if we want to, it gets a little complicated, but we want to divide that by 7, we can, or if we want to divide it by 350 for the incoming ray cycle and the outgoing ray cycle of 350 years. So from that point of view, the 1675 goes to 1975, and another 50 years is 2025. And that is precisely the halfway point in the 700-year seventh ray cycle. Now, why is that important? DK says, is at page 60. It's in the externalization of the hierarchy. I've shown you this before, but you kind of know where it is. I'm going to have a lot of superimposed things here, right? So this is the externalization. And let's go to page 699. I'm not sure if that's it, or maybe 649. But here it is. 699. His coming will, let's see, new energies of love and compassion. Well, anyway, this is one of the important references, but I think, I tell you what, I'm just going to give it to you as I understand it. In the year 2025, plans, in all probability, let's see if I can go here, 649, if that helps. But if not, simple statement, unimportant being, etc., etc. No, it's not that. It's on page 500 and something, and I'm not going to worry about that. But let me just give you the idea, because the idea is accurate, that in the year 2025, plans, in all probability, will be laid for the first stages of the externalization, the actual externalization of the hierarchy. Now, if that's not the climax point of a 700-year cycle on the seventh ray, I don't know what is. So basically what you're dealing with here is all knowledge. Good luck, okay? Now, as I say, Keith Bailey provided this thing here, and I'll go back to find it. There it is. And on the very highest level, the third subplane of the atomic plane, here is all knowledge. Now, I don't know how big I can make that. I can make it pretty big, can't I? And what does it say? If it doesn't drift away from me. The principle of Manus, in its discriminating activity, perfecting the interrelation between self and the not-self. On the third level of the atomic plane comes the knowledge of the science of cycles. Now, what we're doing right now, basically, is we have a few things. We know the first ray operates in 1, 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, etc. year cycles. Second ray in 5, 50, 500, 5,000, etc. ray cycles. Third ray, 9. 9, 90, 900, 9,000, etc. Fourth ray, that is not really given, but Stephen Pugh hypothesizes 25, namely 25, 250, 2500, and DK does talk about a 2500-year cycle relating to humanity. And notice that it's the same as when he sometimes describes a precessional age, you know, like going from Pisces to Aquarius and Aquarius to Capricorn. He sometimes calls it 2,500 years with overlaps. When it comes to the fifth ray, Stephen Pugh hypothesizes 35, 350, 3,500, and ongoingly. The sixth ray, Master DK gives a hint himself. It's the number 15, 150, 1,500 years, 15,000, 150,000, and so forth. And then we come right back to the 7, and it all lines up with 7, 70, 700, 7,000, and so forth. Now, seeing these things all come together, and sometimes a particular year or very close, a bunch of things come together, a bunch of moments in the cycle, they are very important times. And we can see that, in a sense, a 700-year cycle beginning in 1675, 10 years before the birth of Bach, makes sense, will give us, add 300 years, we get 1975, add 50 years, we get 2025. There we are. We're coming up to it right now. There's going to be an externalization, which is one of the big things about the seventh ray. Well, one thing leads to another, and all of this teaching is really one big book, so we have to try to go from here to there. Okay. And here's the thing. You don't get to see these things, and I will read the whole thing, and I'm so sorry. Well, anyway, I'll do that in the future. So Michael Moultram, I think, I have some notes saying seventh ray has as vocations esotericist, builder, and administrator, and also it's one of the two major artistic rays, I will say. Builder, definitely. Administrator, definitely. Magician, of course, and pretty soon there'll be more professional magicians. Esotericist, yes and no, but let's just say occultist magician type. And you see, and don't forget ritualist, that's another one. DK says you can have a particular ray in any of the professions. It's just how you go about it. But some of the rays are more tuned to certain professions than others. I'm reading now. Could this mean that humming away in the background of esoteric enthusiasts is a seed of the seventh ray? Well, I tend to look at it in a broad way, and after studying the rays of the people who were in DK's groups, about 50 or 51 of them, sometimes you find the seventh ray soul or something, but rarely. And you often find the seventh ray physical nature, but I wouldn't apply it to everybody. I think there are 7 different ways of looking at the interior life and working from causes to effects, which would essentially make you an esotericist, or at least a sincere student of esotericism. Okay, 7 times 50 years, right. Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's it. Lenny, thank you. 350. Look, you can divide any ray cycle by the number 7, and you'll see some of what the subcycles might be. Now, I'm trying to think here, if we take, in Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, and without dogmatizing about it, he goes through the 150-year cycles of the sixth ray. And by the way, 1 and 5 make 6, okay? So in that case, it's pretty obvious. And he says, I don't want to be dogmatic about it, and there is some overlap here, but this is what you're likely to find in these sub-cycles. Now, I don't want to get too detailed here, because we could get into a whole different curriculum. But suppose we had 1,500 years. Well, let's just say, suppose we simply had 150 years for a six-ray cycle. We would divide by 7, and, well, if we divide by 7, we'll divide by 7. Okay, 150 divided by 7. And why is this not coming out? Okay, 21, okay. 21.4, 21 and a half years. So in the normal 150 sub-cycle of the sixth ray, the sub-cycle of the sub-cycle is about 21 and a half years. Now, we have to be very acute, very astute, and is it Archimedes, give me a point to stand on and I will move the world. Well, and it's the same way with music. What is the true A? Is it what Bach used, which is closer to 416? Is it 432, which is currently in use? Is it 440 or 447, which some orchestras use? See, we need to know exactly where it all starts. And sometimes we're given some hints, as on page 26 of Esoteric Psychology, Volume 1, but the ray cycles are more complicated and wider than that. So let's just be patient and know that all knowledge in regard to these things is coming. And when we become a higher initiate, these things will gradually drop in as we need them, and right now we have enough to work with. Okay. So. Anything else here? Pretty soon I think it's time for us to have our meditation. Remember, it's glamour that prevents us from seeing all these things, especially when it's combined with the misinterpretation that illusion brings. So our minds get all wrapped up in kama-manas, and it's how we feel about things that becomes important instead of the factual nature of what those things are. So we have to be decentralized. That's what the personality can do. The physical body, well, it's discipline. Let's call it that. There's some overlap here. The astral body is dispassion. The mental body is discrimination. And the personality vehicle as a whole, containing all that, is decentralization. And the soul is detachment. 5 Ds. I gave a talk on that just recently at one of the conferences. And those 5 Ds tell us a lot about how we have to master the vehicles of the personality and the personality as a whole and their relation to the soul, usually in our way. Now, hopefully, we're becoming members of the new group of world servers. Hopefully, we've taken maybe the first initiation. Hopefully, we're working along at ridding ourselves of glamour and of mastering emotional reaction, and instead we have the proper response. There's quite a difference between response and reaction. You're kind of helpless when you deal with reaction. Response is more deliberate, and hopefully the second initiation for the majority, just as it was for the majority of DK students, is beginning to be in sight. Hopefully that is the case. So, and when that happens, then we have mental illumination and spiritual intelligence, and we're on our way to a truer understanding in the light of these esoteric factors and our own personal monastic situation, what we like, what we don't like, what my habits are, what I want to preserve, my egotism, and all the rest of it. Those things will be worn away, and we will see things more as they are. Okay, now before, Michael, I'll try to remember, or was it Chris? Yeah, please read the comments and the questions. Yeah, we'll try to remember that. I did think that, or forgot, everybody doesn't necessarily see what I see. And I'm seeing all these questions here, and I should really, I have read a lot of them, but maybe not in such a way as you would know it. Okay, is there any further question or statement before we get into our meditation for today? And by the way, as I say, Tuya and I are in the north now at the Little Bear Meditation Center, and when we have to travel, we can't do some of the things that are scheduled for that, but we'll try to let you know what that's all about so that you don't waste your time coming to look for something that's not there. Okay, any final statements or anything? And Joe and BL, you can help me locate anything if I'm missing it.
I don't see anything else.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Bill. Okay, look, you know, the whole thing is persistence. You know, now, you wouldn't know it. I mean, the vast majority of the people who really stick with DK have the second ray in some important place, like the soul ray or the monadic ray. And he said to Roberto Assagioli with his second ray soul and first ray mind, he says, you have the will like tempered steel of your second ray soul. The will like tempered steel of your second ray soul. And he said about the second ray, which is the major ray on which he's teaching these things, that they persist and persist without let up and without leeway until they accomplish. The first ray goes crashing through at certain moments, but the steady drive may not be there except in emergency situations. So whatever it is, we're in a second ray teaching, and probably most of us are going to have either the second ray soul or the second ray monad, and, you know, quite apart from other places the second ray may show up, and we will persist, you see. And gradually, what does he say? Keep silence and the light will enter in. Well, there are times when we really need the silence, and he tells us the light will enter in. And we live in confidence and we work in confidence that we're on the right track here, guided by Master DK. And slowly, the light is entering in. And in these ray cycles, and at different times, different kinds of glamours will show themselves and then be outlived and not returned to. Yeah, okay, so, right, and Alexandra, you know, the big thing about the new prime minister and the Brexit and the Gemini divisions that are going on and the Taurus stubbornness of adhering to inherited wealth and advantage. As she says here, we are sinking in a quagmire of glamour here, so I am just sending. Well, let's keep our eyes on the United Kingdom with its motto, I serve. And really, I serve with justice, because it's got this very strong Libran soul, or Libra, at least, is involved very much with London, the capital of all of this, and Leo too. So it's quite a battle, between hanging on to the traditions of power and finding ways of being just with a world consciousness. What a battle we're in right now between everywhere, between personality tendencies and soul tendencies. As I say, the two great democracies, well, okay, let's say the two great democracies on the second ray, the United Kingdom and the United States, are both severely challenged by the negative form-oriented workers who do not seek for the kind of progress that the hierarchy seeks. So let's just do our best to support the idea of the emergent democracy, which second ray always rules. First ray monarchy, second ray democracy, third ray socialism, communism, more man-made. And that's not to say that all of them do not have their virtues when they are held in balance. As a matter of fact, in a way, the hierarchy has all of these in balance. Shambhala is more monarchic, hierarchy more democratic, let us say, and humanity more along the line of socialism and communism, with the experiment of democracy trying to emerge. But, you see all kinds of stuff that's going to come up when Pluto and Vulcan, before the first initiation of humanity, become so prominent. So, they're dragging everything to the surface and forcing the spiritual will upon humanity. And that's not a bad thing. It's just uncomfortable. You ever get into a tight place where there's not a whole lot of room to maneuver, if you're going to do the right thing. You're pretty well nailed in that way to a small space to do the right thing. And that suggests the fixed cross which humanity is beginning to mount. Now, people like ourselves who have a little experience with these matters, we should be on the fixed cross already, or, making the transition. And it's the cross of the emergent soul. So we'll be with you, Alex, and all workers who are trying to see through the mess. And if you think you've got a mess, just watch what happens in America now with this impeachment thing. Every kind of lie in the world is going to be emerging, and every kind of false accusation and false witness and attempt to drive back and obscure the truth, all of that will be emerging. So we'll have to do our job on the inside. Okay, friends, I think that'll be enough for right now. And now the next time we get together, if it's possible, will be the 11th. It'll probably be a morning schedule. So I'll just say that here somewhere. I haven't even gotten into the glamours per se. So what we'll do is we'll continue with the seventh ray, because there's such a synthesis going on there, and we want to wrap it all up in the right way. We haven't really gone very far at all in this, because there's been a lot of questions and a lot of things to discuss. So this is the 4th of October, and it's number 130, I think. Correct me, O voices of God, if not. And I think this will be the 11th. And also it'll be a morning presentation, and that'll be the same morning, wherever we are. That will be the same day as we have to have the pre-full moon webinar. I don't know why this wants to just run the other way. Okay, morning presentation. And then we'll continue with the seventh ray, since with the first ray and the second ray, it is a major ray for the new age and presents a kind of synthesis which we have not yet experienced. Okay. So, those who joined us, welcome. Glad you are here. I just want to say so. And now, however, we have to move on. And what do we meditate on today? Some glamour or other. Let it be called partisanship. Now, I'm observing that people are narrow in their thought. They are not inclusive. They're not embracing the whole. They're not looking for the welfare of the whole. They're looking for the success of the small parts with which they identify. And hence we have what we call parties. Parties. It's like religions and philosophies. They get all fragmented. And we are in a fragmented situation. And I'm just amazed at how the head of the cosmic Christ, which is Gemini, is being used in a negative manner at this time to have battles of partisanship. Now, some of the people that have been really, in the United States, maybe I know more about the United States, and our president is Gemini, his personal lawyer is a Gemini, the head of the Department of Justice is a Gemini. They're all sort of in cahoots, to present a lying point of view. Now, that's one of the problems with Mercury, In the early days, Mercury really spins a web and tells the tale, and it's the ruler of Gemini. Plus, there's an innate inability to stand on principle in the early use of Gemini, when instability does its work. Later, it's the pillars of Hercules. It's the two columns that lead into the mysteries. It's the head of the cosmic Christ. It's DK's sign and KH's sign and Alice Bailey's and Foster Bailey and Mary Bailey, all Gemini, either sun sign or rising sign. But when it's being used by someone or people who have a personal focus, where is the truth? Where is the truth? So we see a lot of that right now. When Mercury is connected with Scorpio, we hear the words, "Let Maya flourish and deception rule." Well, that's happening right now. And Mercury is connected with Gemini. And by the way, the man who's the Prime Minister of England at this time, Gemini. And there's one other guy in there who's also a Gemini. And I forget, I can't tell you for sure whether it's the mastermind behind a lot of the Prime Minister's thought, but there's another spinner of stories that's a Gemini inside this. Like I say, it's without Gemini we wouldn't have this teaching. But in the early days of personality focus, it can be a problem. Okay. Now, let's go on, and we will work. So, I'm trusting that some of you have your own glamour groups, and there's a number of people all over the world, number of groups that are doing these kind of things. And since it's not maybe a larger group meditation, you'll time it according to what is best for your group. But for right now, we won't have the full 10 minutes of silence, but let's enter the silence. So no matter where we are geographically, we are forming one instrument to work esoterically under the guidance of Master DK, the methods which he has suggested for us. Now, it must never be forgotten that the major line of attack of the Lords of Form at this time is the astral plane. There's just not enough people that are mentally focused to attack on the level of mind, although there is an attack there too. So it's in the astral body that the greatest of illusions, in a general sense, is found, and the most problem and the most danger. So we need this protection, and he gives it to us. So we'll make the long arm cross, which he calls the cross of divinity. It involves the eyes and not the shoulders, as in, more in the Catholic Church. And we will say then, as a soul I work in light, and darkness cannot touch me. I take my stand within the light, I work, and from that point I never move. Trace the light, a little cross traced in light on each one of us, and before the group, the larger cross of divinity, because we enter an area where some types of human beings don't want us to be working. And as we know now, we combine the three lights, the light of matter, the vital light of matter from the etheric physical level, and we lift that to the mental plane. Lower mental plane, probably the fourth level of the mental plane. So the two lights come together. The light on the plane of mind, reasonable, logical, discriminating, and the vital light of matter supports it and blends with it. We reach up also to the light of the soul. Try to get a feeling for that, of what soul light really is. Usually as if above the head. Then we bring that light down to contact the other two forms of light, and it fuses, the three fuse into one. So a triple light there is, which is as one light. And from this light will come forth our beam, which is at once a beam to detect glamour and a beam to dissipate glamour. And we can imagine, that the beam comes out of the forehead, and they all blend together and form one group beam, which is the group instrument. So, we say, the light is one, and in that light shall we see light. This is the light that turns the darkness into day. So the beam goes forth, we imagine, ready to do its work. Very bright, very strong. We'll be strengthening it in just a moment, even with the will. As soon as we say the words of our formula. Radiance are we and power. We stand forever with our hands stretched out, linking the heavens and the earth, the inner world of meaning and the subtle world of glamour. We reach into the light and bring it down to meet the need. We reach into the silent place and bring from thence the gift of understanding. Thus, with the light we work and turn the darkness into day. So that searchlight is before us, and it is going into the subtle world of the astral plane. It's not yet really the subjective world of the soul, but it goes forth onto the astral plane, and we strengthen it. And we invoke, to strengthen it, the spiritual will coming from many sources, the sacrifice petals and the jewel in the lotus, and from the atmic plane, and even from the monad. We're going to strengthen our beam, imagine it being strengthened so that it can do its job successfully. So we're summoning this spiritual will, and we use this mantra. With power upon its beam, the light is focused on the goal. So we're going to be wielding this beam of reinforced light. We're going to work with this glamour of partisanship, which means you only see your part. And how can you see reality and truth if you only see one small part of the reality and truth? Read up on the second ray and you'll see how the development makes it possible for you to see that both sides are one. If the sixth ray conditions too much, then you think the truth lies only with your own side, as it were. But some there are one day will form a third party that will embrace the best of both sides, which are at this time on the earth very adversarial. So the glamour of partisanship, people have been fighting each other as if they were each the implacable enemy of the other for thousands, millions of years. When we're told about the Bhagavad Gita, two sides. One, both sides of Arjuna's family. And, it's a soul personality division. The battle took place in Libra, we're told. And Libra should allow the union of the two. When you're dealing with the Black Lodge, of course, there's no compromise. But when you're dealing with the personality, it's a necessary instrument before it gets corrupted by the Black Lodge. So this partisanship, seeing only your own point of view, what has it meant to humanity over the years? We'll never find wholeness and integration as long as one part or the other only has the victory. The fourth ray doesn't work that way. It manages to pull a victory out of the side that is defeated also. The sixth ray does work that way. One is right, one is wrong, at least at the earlier development of the sixth ray. So see if in the opposing point of view there is any grain of truth, some value. DK sometimes talks about the conservative movement. You know, the word conservative means, in a way, preserving the best values of the past, conserving them. But really, in some people, it's turned into a radical, reactive movement against progress. So let us use the words of power, knowing what the situation is and trying to come up with a win-win situation for everybody on this planet. It's going to require the art of spiritual compromise, which is connected a lot with the fourth ray. It's not going to mean so much the victory of one part over another part. I mean, when you're dealing with the Black Lodge and with deliberate attempts to destroy humanity, that's another matter. But when you're dealing with people of different ray types who see things from a different perspective, we want to know, what is the value of the perspective from which you are seeing? And that's different from just fighting for your own cause, convinced that your way is the only way. So, the power of our united light prevents the appearance of the glamour of partisanship. The power of our united light negates the quality of this glamour of partisanship from affecting humanity. And you just think about how true cooperation even with people who are representing quite different points of view, will be a benefit to everyone. And finally, the power of our united light destroys the life behind this glamour of partisanship. Okay, now we'll go into our still more intense work with the 5 minutes of silence. The light is penetrating the glamour, weakening it, dissipating it. The sun of truth is coming out, the deglamorized position. So 5 minutes of silence and intensity of purpose whilst the work is seen progressing. The key in these solutions is to see the whole and not only the part, to identify as the larger picture and not just the part. Otherwise we'll have fragmentation, no cooperation, no unity, no real wholeness. And truth requires all the proper points of view, the wholeness. So let's be somehow appreciative of the other point of view and find the value in it. It's there. And if we find it, we'll find a solution which includes everybody, and the Martian polarization and conflict between ideals will subside. So now we withdraw our beam. We take it back to the mental plane and let the lights go where they will. The light of the soul, the light of the mind, the light of matter. And when we do this individually, we bring the lights together. And when we do it in group, we bring the lights together. But we've done a little bit of work, hopefully. A little bit more, people will be able to see what cooperation is, and including the apparent opposite. What is that? In astrology, you're told to pay particular attention to the sign opposite your sun sign for various reasons. The sign opposite your rising sign also for various reasons. And when a cross comes together, all the opposites, they meet in the center and they rise to the point of synthesis, which will give us the more universal understanding. So let us sound the Om 3 times, knowing that we have affected the mind, especially the emotions and desires of the astral plane and the etheric physical plane, beginning with the mind. We are eliminating the disorder of the etheric physical, the distortion of the astral, and the separativeness of the lower mental. And clarifying the situation on the greatest plane of illusion, as it is said in a general sense, the astral plane, and trying to solve the problem of kama manas. And every one of us, as we detect our own individual distortions, exaggerations, minimizations, glamours, we are contributing to the de-glamorization of the whole. and the sun of truth and of the beautiful and of the good shines in our imagination, and one day it will shine within all the vehicles of the personality. So thank you, friends. Lots of love from Tuya and myself and the Olivia and the whole team. And we'll continue tomorrow evening schedule, the Soul of Nations, maybe with some reading from the Destiny of the Nations, we'll see. And then Sunday, attracting financial resources for the externalization and the reappearance. Thank you for coming, being with us. And remember, keep working on your distortions. I guess that's the only way. Keep working on those points which, because of their exaggeration or their minimization, in other words, you think a thing is more important or less important than it really is, because of the lack of proportion and the lack of humility, show up as glamours, preventing our true relationship with reality. So we all have them. Let's be acute in finding them and dealing with them according to the proper esoteric manner. So this program will be converted, as we, all these programs that I find are being converted, and especially, the webinars, they need the conversion, and they'll show up on the Makara website, and before you know it, we'll have them also on the YouTube channels, giving a wider audience. Remember to tell your friends who you think may be of interest and be able to benefit. Tell them about these programs. They're certainly welcome to attend, and perhaps it will start for them a new day in the regeneration of their psyche. So lots of love, many blessings, and for those of you who come, we'll see you tomorrow night at the 5 p.m. GMT time. So, bye for now.